welcome everyone. As you enter, if you want to drop in the chat where you're from, if you're with an organization, you can put that. If not, no worries. Just, where you are located geographically. It's always nice to see where people are. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give it another minute or two for folks to join before we get started. So we have some good West Coast representation this morning. Welcome, everyone. Vermont is one of my favorite places, Mary. All right, welcome. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll get started here. So thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar on ending food waste at home. And you might be wondering, why is a food recovery organization that usually talks about food recovery organizations talking about stopping food waste at home? Jake, if you can go to the next slide. So this has actually changed a lot since we started 412 Food Rescue and Food Rescue Hero. About 10 years ago, the statistics were that food waste, the majority of food waste was and still is happening at consumer-facing businesses and homes, but it was about equal. But you can see that food recovery has really put in a dent on how much food is being wasted at consumer-facing businesses. Now, we still have a ways to go. We're only about halfway there, but really rescuing all that food from businesses and increased awareness at businesses about reducing their food waste has really cut into the amount of food waste that is coming from consumer-facing businesses. And at this point, homes are the #1 source for food waste, and it has not declined very much in the last 10 years. It is still a significant portion of the food that is going into the landfill. And most of the food that's being wasted across the spectrum from the farm to the fork is fresh food. 36% of it is produce. That is by and far the largest category of food waste going into a landfill. And why should you care about food waste at home? Well, first of all, you're throwing money in the garbage. And by you, I mean me. I am not immune to wasting food at home. But these statistics are startling. We, on average, waste about 30% of the food that we purchase. The average food budget in American households is $412. That means we're wasting $131 a month. And if your food bill is larger than that, then so is the amount of money that you're just throwing away. And that's horrifying. I'm looking at that and thinking, oh my God, if I stopped wasting food, how much money could we save? And then the second reason, of course, is the environmental impact of food waste. Food waste is a major contributor to global greenhouse gases. in so much so that one of the goals of the UN Sustainable Development Goals is to cut food waste in half by 50% per capita. We are wasting food is creating about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That is more, by the way, than airline travel. The volume of water that we use to produce food that is then thrown away is enormous. You can see the volume of Lake Geneva. About 30% of our agricultural land is being used to produce food that's thrown away. And so when you think about the conversations we have about ending global hunger, do we need to increase production or change how we're producing food? Let's start with not throwing it away. Jake? Of course, the food waste reduction hierarchy says that the best thing to do is to reduce the source. So that means just stop wasting it. Obviously, food recovery comes in on that second tier, that blue line of feeding people, and that's why we do what we do, and we appreciate everybody that's involved in that. It impacts not only the global climate impact, but also hunger. And so it's really important for a number of reasons to do food recovery. But we really have to think about our impact as individuals and what we're how we're contributing in our homes as well. So we're going to talk about how to end food waste at home. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is no magic bullet. Like, I'm not going to give you some surefire secret way to stop wasting food at home. It takes a commitment. But I think it's really important to remember why we want to stop wasting food, the impact it has on our budget, the impact it has on the environment. Really, remember that as we commit to ourselves to stop wasting food. But there are some tips and tricks that, you can adopt that will help you reduce food waste at home. And these are ones that many of which I've tried. So first of all, what's your problem? Kind of be honest with yourself about where you're wasting food. We did this webinar actually as an in-person event 8 years ago, I think, and we had a picture instead of strawberries of zucchini, because I swear to you, my problem is the moldy zucchini. I'm always more ambitious with my zucchini purchase than I am with my zucchini consumption. So I really, I know this about myself, and I really try to mitigate, the produce that I buy so that I'm not wasting it. But it could also be that you just have leftovers in your fridge that you never eat, or you can't find things in your fridge because it's chock full of stuff and you just can't find things. But also be aware of some unusual suspects for food waste. Take coffee, for example. You might not think of coffee as food waste because you're dumping it down the drain, right? And if you make too much coffee, big deal. But think about the upstream impact of producing that coffee. Coffee is a very high impact crop, right? And so if you're making more coffee than you need, and you're then just dumping that down the drain, those coffee grounds, that coffee that you use to make the coffee that you throw away, could have been used tomorrow or another day. So you're really contributing to that overproduction of coffee. So really think about, how the food that you eat, and especially the food that you don't eat, is impacting, the overproduction of food as well as the growth of landfill. So the first step comes in planning. Plan to use what you buy, plan your meals, really be thoughtful. If you have to buy big bunches of stuff, if you have to buy, for example, like a big bag of carrots or a whole head of celery, make sure that your meal plan for the week includes use of those carrots. Or if you have to buy a whole thing of strawberries so that you can have one strawberry dessert, what are you going to do with the rest? Maybe you can include those in your meal plan for breakfast. Don't plan on something else for breakfast if you're going to have leftover strawberries. When you make your list, include quantities. So instead of putting salad greens, for example, this one here, salad greens for 4 salads. I literally just screwed this up a couple weeks ago. We were shopping and I threw salad greens in the cart, but it was the giant one. And I ended up wasting that because there's no way I was going to eat that much salad. So really be thinking about, as you buy perishables, will this get used, or is this just too much? And sometimes it feels like you're spending more to buy a smaller amount, but if you're throwing away the extra, you're not actually saving any money.
And Jen, something to add here, there's there's a lot of really cool technology around this. A couple of years back, I thought, how cool would it be to think of all the recipes I want to cook, and then it shows me what ingredients I need. And then I can buy the exact ingredients for these specific 3 or 4 recipes that I want to cook each week. Unbeknownst to me, there were already apps for that exact thing. The one I use is called Yumly. I can send that out in the chat. I know that there are plenty of others. There's also technologies for you can input the ingredients you've got in your refrigerator or cabinet, and it will give you recipes based on those ingredients if you want to use extra things. So just there's cool technology out there that you can use specifically for this purpose.
Yeah, that is a really great point, Jake. And I actually was thinking about mentioning that second app you talked about. And I can't remember the name of it. I wish I had written down or put a picture in here, a graphic of that app. But
yeah,
it's super helpful to be able to put in, well, I have these, this produce, what can I make with this, or these other ingredients?
While you're presenting, I'll try and find it, but there's a couple of them, I know.
Okay, so, great.
Yeah.
And then shop small and shop often. This is sort of the European way of doing things, right? They just buy what they need for dinner that night. That is very difficult for some families, and that's not going to work for everybody. But if that's something that you can do, it's a great way to ensure that you are not buying a bunch of produce or ingredients, meat, dairy, whatever, expecting to cook a certain meal that week and then just never getting to it, which is something I'm certainly often guilty of. Do a lot of meal planning for the week and then don't actually cook the things that I think I'm going to cook. So shopping small and shopping often is really, really helpful to reduce food waste. And then, of course, only cook what you plan to eat. I know a lot of us like leftovers, and that's great. Certainly, if you're going to eat your leftovers, make enough for leftovers. But this is something that I really struggled with when my kids went to college, is I would make what I would always make, and I would end up with way more food than we needed. And there was just no way we could eat all of that stew, for example. And while I was able to freeze some of it, just on an ongoing basis, I was cooking way more food than we needed. And so really thinking about how much food you're cooking and will you actually be able to eat that? In the store, and I mentioned this briefly, but only buy in large quantities if you're actually going to use the food before it spoils. And I'm super guilty of this. I see buy one, get one free. I'm like, I will buy that right away. But if I'm not going to cook all of that produce or that chicken or whatever it is, and I'm not going to freeze it, or I'm just going to forget about it or be optimistic and not get it frozen in time, then I haven't actually saved any money. I've in fact wasted money. So, really be careful about buying in large quantities if that is not, if you're not going to eat it. Buy local. Local food will last longer, especially produce. It has spent less time in transit. It is fresher, and you will have a longer shelf life before you need to eat it. Shop seasonal produce. I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a minute, but again, with seasonal produce, it tends to be fresher. If it's local, you don't have the transportation cost or impact there. And it will last you longer and prevent your zucchini or strawberries from going moldy before you can eat them. And this is one I always forget about, because when you walk in the grocery store, what's first? It's the produce section, but you should pick up your produce last. If you take 30 to 45 minutes to shop and then you've got to get home and get it put away, you're really reducing the shelf life of that produce by having it out of refrigeration for extra time. Now, I just wanted to mention this. I just learned this year that out of season asparagus has a huge carbon footprint because they fly it in order to make sure that it stays fresh enough for the consumer to get the quality they want. So really be careful and thoughtful about buying out of season produce, especially things that have to come a long distance or have to be flown, because they will have a carbon footprint way oversized for the actual food that you're getting. And that's not necessarily about food waste, but it is about the impact of your food. Also consider upcycled foods. Upcycled foods are a great way to help manufacturers reduce waste. And while you're not actually reducing your household waste, it is a great way to be responsible with what you're eating. Back, Jake. I love these brands. We always try to patronize them and buy them whenever we get them. The Upcycled Food Association has a whole list on their website of foods that you can get that are upcycled. I love these regrain or renewal mill cookies. They are amazing, and they're made from flour that was used in the production of things like oat milk, pineapple juice. Imagine pineapple flour, isn't that cool? And tofu. And then, of course, my favorite over here is the Misadventure vodka, which is made in California, but I do believe they ship throughout the United States, and it's made, anybody in food recovery is going to love this, from upcycled pastries, because we all know there's more pastries in the world than there needs to be. So drink responsibly, get yourself some Misadventure vodka. Also, be aware of and understand ethylene gas. Ethylene gas is a hormone produced by fruit that helps the fruit age and ripen. And it's super useful. But ethylene gas, when it's emitted by fruits, can increase the rate at which other fruits ripen or go bad. So that old adage about one bad apple spoils the bunch, that's actually literally ethylene gas doing its work. So as an apple, if you've got an apple that's old and rotten and starting to produce a lot of that gas, it will increase the rate of degradation of the apples around it. And next slide, Jake. So you can find this information online. This is one that I actually have posted on my refrigerator because I never remember it, but you want to really think about where you're storing your produce, like apples in the refrigerator. I never in a million years would have thought apples should go in the refrigerator, but because they're a gas releaser, the refrigerator will help slow the release of that gas, will help slow the rate at which they, over ripen and go bad. And will then also, they will not impact everything else around it. And keep away from gas producers, things like bananas, which will go bad super quickly if they're around other gas producers, or lettuce and leafy greens. And so this is just something to think about, how are you storing your produce? Making sure that you are extending the life of it as long as possible so you have that extra time to eat it. And then in your refrigerator, there's some things that you can do to make sure that it's not contributing to the amount of food that you waste. And I currently am renting a house, and it has a very small refrigerator that I hate with a passion of 1,000 suns because it's super small, and I really struggle to make sure that I can see what's in that fridge. And some of these things have really worked for me. So first of all, check your temperature. Make sure the temperature in your fridge is below 39 degrees. You don't want it freezing, but you don't want it above 39. That will keep things at the optimum freshness. Label things in clear plastic containers so you know what's in there. And this is my favorite. I started doing this within the last year, and I literally just take a piece of tape and write on it with a Sharpie what is in that container. It makes it so much easier for me to find things. I put a date on it so I know when I put it in there, because sometimes I'm like, I don't remember. And it helps me really stay on top of that. And then either remove the drawers from your refrigerator, or, and this is what I do, use it for your condiments, right? Put your condiments in there. You don't need to see them. When you want mustard, you know where the mustard's going to be, and you're going to go get it. And it's not going to go bad. And then you put your lettuce and your produce up where you can see them, where your condiments used to be stored, and it will keep it top of mind so that you're able to remember to use those quickly. And then, of course, as things approach their date, freeze them, pickle them, dry them. If you can do anything to prevent it going into the landfill, you're really ahead of the game. I actually love my dehydrator. It is a great way to extend the life of produce. And I actually really love dried fruits and vegetables. And then, should you cut your vegetables or not? There's a lot of debate about this. And I think it's really understanding what is going to work for you, what works for your lifestyle. So whole vegetables, they stay fresh longer. It is just absolutely a fact that if as soon as you cut a vegetable, the clock starts ticking on it. And so you really want to be careful about doing that too early. At the same time, it takes more time to cook it. If I have a container of cut strawberries versus a container of whole strawberries, I'm much more likely to grab the cut strawberries and throw it on my oatmeal than I am to pull out the whole strawberries and cut them. And same thing for cut or for whole vegetables, is that it makes it a more labor intensive process to use them when you're short on time. So cutting them, easier to use, grab and go, you're more likely to eat it. For me, especially some things, if I cut them in advance, I'm much more likely to eat them than if I leave them whole. By the same token, it really limits the window on that. Much faster spoilage on things that are cut. And if you're going to eat it raw, it has to be consumed within 7 days of you cutting it. Otherwise, it is a food safety hazard, listeria, which could be on your cutting board. It oftentimes is on fruits and vegetables that you'll buy. It will grow in the refrigerator. So after 7 days, you have to cook anything that's cut. It can last more than 7 days, but it has to be cut or cooked. And then, of course, storing it properly will help extend the life on that as well. We talked about that earlier in terms of putting gas producers, isolating your gas producers, but you can also extend the life by cutting and putting your vegetables in water. My mother used to do this all the time. I don't know why I completely forgot about that until I was working on this webinar and realized, oh yeah, that is a great tip. And so I recently started doing that again. And then also lettuce, you can extend the life on your lettuce with CO2. So some people breathe into the bag. If it's just going to be you eating it, you can do that. But if you have a seltzer maker, like I have a seltzer maker, right? You can just put a little CO2 into your bag and that will keep your lettuce fresh longer. And those baby greens are so quick to go bad. This is such a great way to extend the life on that salad. And then, of course, balance convenience and best practices and figure out what works for you. And what I really, really want to stress here, instead of going through all of this, is do what works for you. Understand you. If you know that you're going to be too tired to cook at least 2 or 3 nights a week, and you're going to want a microwave dinner or you're going to want to order out, then accept that and don't buy groceries for those days. Like we know in our house, we're going to order out at least once a week. So I don't plan 7 meals. I know that we're going to order out one day, probably going to have leftovers another day from that. And so really think about that as you're planning your meals and you're thinking about how to prevent food waste. Is understand who you are, how you operate, and what is going to work for you. And like I said, there's no magic bullet. There's no one right way to do this. It's understanding what is going to help you maximize your usage of the food that you purchase. And then, of course, cook outside the box. I just recently saw this statistic. 15% of household food waste are edible peels. Edible peels. So don't peel your carrots. That's where a lot of the nutrition is anyway. And anytime that you can eat the peels, do. Peeling is just not ideal in terms of creating food waste and, of course, removing nutrition from your food. But also think about other parts of the food that are edible. So you can make pesto from carrot tops. Don't throw away your beet stems. They're delicious sauteed. And broccoli stems. I was a young woman when I found this out, but the first time I realized you could eat broccoli stems, I was blown away. I thought you could only eat the tops, but the stems are delicious. And you can cook them like you would broccoli, or you can do something like make broccoli stem hummus. So just really think about eating as much of the produce that you're buying as possible. And if you're never going to eat carrot tops, I would say don't buy carrots with the tops on it, but then they're still going to get thrown away. So if you can buy the carrots with the tops and make something out of it, you're really one step ahead of the game.
I saw somebody try to make, it was like a brisket substitute with banana peels, which really shocked me.
Yes.
Have you seen that, Jen? I thought of you.
Yes, I have. I haven't tried it yet, and I actually really want to. You can eat banana peels, and they make a really good vegan like meat substitute.
Yeah,
supposedly. I haven't tried it.
I'm interested. My interest is, I'm skeptical, but interested. I'll report back.
Yeah, we'll have to give that a try and we'll let folks know how it goes. All right. And then if you still are wasting food, skip the landfill and compost. Even if you live in the city, you can find a composter that'll fit your lifestyle. You don't even have to garden. Composting is a still smaller carbon footprint than it is to throw it in the landfill. I mean, you can just sprinkle it in the backyard or wherever. The one thing about landfill, it should be not landfill. Composting, it should be the last resort before landfill because it doesn't eliminate the upstream impact. That food still has been grown, that water has still been used, that cropland has been used, all of the carbon that is produced when growing vegetables or creating food has already happened, and you have to buy something else to eat. And so it isn't it shouldn't be our first choice in making sure that we're keeping food out of the landfill. It is great and better than a landfill for sure, but it is not shouldn't be our number one choice. Now I will say there's some really, really cool products on the market that do composting in your house, and there's one that has like goldfish and the compost feeds the fish. And then I think the fish like poop and that fertilizes the plants that are growing there, something like that. But there's some really, really cool ways that people are creating sort of a circular economy of food with home composting. And so that's it. So we will take questions now if you drop them into the Q&A.
Yes, so there are already a few, so we'll get to those. Before we get to those, just a few other things that I think we didn't mention. Jen, you mentioned cooking for your kids before they went to college. If you overcook or have food that you don't think you're going to use, share it with friends. Cook a meal for friends.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want to cook a meal for friends or don't want to have people over, just drop food off at their house. Friends love when you just say, hey, I cooked a meal for you and I was thinking if you wanted to deliver some food. So sharing food is always another good way to not waste if you think you've overbought. So with that, we'll get to some questions. Marissa had two. First of all, I like the graphic showing homes are the number one source of waste food. Is this available on your website so I could share it on social media? I don't think it is, but I'm sure we could get you these resources or these slides.
Yeah, just email us and we can get that to you. I believe it's from Refed. I think that was the source. And also, if anybody has any other tips, drop them in the chat as well. I saw a great article. Well, I haven't read the article, but I see that Stephen posted an article about finding recipes for what you have. I love that. I'm definitely going to be checking that out later.
Marissa also asked, do you have these tips in outreach materials for residents? Marissa, can you clarify what you mean by for residents? And then somebody else asked, will these slides be shared after the webinar?
Yeah, so we have not put this together in a format to share with anybody other than this website or this webinar, but we will be sharing the presentation. So if you wanted to grab these and produce a resource like that, you're more than welcome to. And if you do that and you'd be willing to share it, let us know. We'd love to post that. So
yeah, Marissa, I hope that answers your question. So that you said that you're a local recycling coordinator. You want to educate people. So hopefully sharing the slides will suffice. If not, please get in touch and we can certainly figure out how to get you some of the supporting materials and documents and resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other questions? No?
Are there other tips and things that people have been successful with in reducing food waste?
Somebody put in there, community fridges are great too. I would be careful about putting prepared food into a community fridge. I don't know what the rules are on that, like home cooked food. I know, for example, 412 Food Rescue does not take food that's cooked in a home kitchen. We only take it if it was cooked in a commercial kitchen, a licensed kitchen. However, whole produce, for example, is something you could certainly put into a community kitchen, or you might be able to find an organization that would happily take that home prepared food and distribute it for you.
Yep. There's another, I don't know if this is a question in the Q&A section, but somebody said, I've been using HelloFresh recently, which has been super helpful for reducing our food waste. However, I haven't done much research on the environmental impact. Neither have I, do not know. Jen, do you know anything about the environmental impact?
That's a really great question, and I don't know. I have used a meal delivery service where they actually prepare the meals and deliver them fresh to you, just because of time constraints in my life. I do question the food has to be, trucked to me, basically. But if they are conscientious about not wasting food in their kitchen, it could be a good source, but I have not done any research on it.
Okay, yeah, and I saw somebody said I can share about the HelloFresh impact.
Yeah, great.
Want to post if there's a link that you can post in the chat?
And I do know a lot of those meal services do donate food to local food recovery organizations when they have excess, which is, great. They are keeping their waste footprint down and sharing it with people who need it. So I do know that, but I haven't read anything about any systematic analysis.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's stuff out there.
It's a give and take. There's no perfect solution. Like I said, it's a matter of understanding what is going to work for you and help you really be the most conscientious and the most active in avoiding food waste as you can.
Yeah. And I see, Kim, we rescue all of the excess from local HF distribution facilities, including surplus kits and ingredients. That's fantastic. Sandra, I saw your question. Well, maybe again, not more of a question, but I find that for a 1 to 2 person home, frozen fruits and veggies work well, much less waste for us. Even purchase already chopped frozen onions, peppers, etc. Also, keeping whole apples in the fridge is great. They last a month. Yes.
Yeah. And I started buying the pre-chopped mirepoix or just carrots or fruit or something like that from my local grocery store. And at first I was like, well, this is really expensive. And then I thought about, well, how much does it cost for me to buy a whole thing of carrots and a whole thing of celery and a whole thing of onions? And I'm not going to eat it all. I'm going to waste half of it. And it's going to take me extra time to chop it. There have been times in my life where just my time and my week has gotten away from me and I haven't used any of it. And so I think that pre-chopped stuff, while it feels wasteful, is actually really helpful in a lot of ways. Somebody posted about Tina, about using a wooden clementine box to create a use first produce box. And I think that's a great tip, is to have a way to designate in your refrigerator what needs to be used first and what can wait.
Yeah, and shout out to the used clementine box. That's kind of fun. I like that too.
Yeah, it is.
Tina also, it might be different Tina actually, posted a good tip recently shared with me is that the grocery list is not only so that you don't forget something you need, but also so you don't get something you don't need. Yes, don't go to the grocery store hungry. Yes, that is a great tip. And I think, like I shared, that the app Yumly is really good for that. I'm sure that there are others that work exactly the same way. And you can check off what you already have before you already go to the grocery store, so you're not buying I don't know,
Excess.
When you already have it. So yeah.
Yeah. And to that end, having your groceries delivered, shopping online, it can be really helpful as well, because you're not, the impulse purchases are less. You're not walking past things and saying, oh, that sounds good, I think I'll get that.
Yeah. My impulse purchase is almost always ice cream. Luckily goes in the freezer anyway. So yeah, thanks for all the tips. Any additional questions? Sounds like most of them were around sharing this. So we will do that.
So can you put up the next webinar slide, Jake?
Yes. Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We are having our next webinar will be in July, and it will focus on, I think there's a slide, isn't there? Advance the slide.
I do not have a slide. Oh, is there? Let me see.
Yeah, there is.
Yes. Okay.
There we go. Yeah. The next webinar is how to balance your fundraising plate. So I will be out. It will be our amazing development team who will be talking about this. And they're going to look at the different types of activities that you should have in your fundraising portfolio and how you should balance them so that you're not relying entirely on one source, how that makes a healthy balance for your fundraising. Also, as a reminder, in October, we are hosting an online conference for food recovery. You can find information about it on our website, or I think Jake just dropped the link. It will be, this year's focus will be on practical information for food recovery organizations. So hopefully every speaker will provide you with some really actionable takeaways to help you increase your impact and grow your food recovery organization. So thank you everyone so much for being here. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, but just before Jen wraps up, real quickly, if you want to learn more about or just want to chat about food waste specifically, or are interested in starting a food rescue organization or using our technology to increase the capacity of your food rescue organization, please set up time to talk with me on my Calendly link, and would love to chat one-on-one.
Yes, reminders will be sent out about the conference and the upcoming webinar. Actually, Tim, if you if you attend, Tina, sorry, I don't know why I keep seeing that as Tim. Sorry, Tina, yes, a reminder about the conference will be sent to folks who attended this webinar. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you and your presence here, and hopefully we'll see you at the conference or the next webinar. All right. Is it over? Did you end it?
No, I'll do it right now.